I don't know.
Oh,
let me know when we're ready to start.
Are we officially starting?
No, not yet. We'll get the go ahead from Dave, don't we, Dave?
It says on
couple of minutes.
The webinar is now streaming live on YouTube.
We've started the stream and we're going to start the recording as well, and then we'll let the audience in, and then we'll start at 12 o'clock.
Just kind of thinking back, I mean, you know, we're going to go over this in the interview, or the talk, sorry, the chat, the coffee. Yeah, why do we perform, I guess? Where does it all come from? Yeah.
It's my own form of therapy, isn't it? Like, instead of paying therapists to work through my issues, the audience pays me to work through my issues.
I like that. You should market that stuff. help me work through my issues.com.
Couple of minutes.
The webinar is now streaming live on YouTube.
We've started the stream and we're going to start the recording as well, and then we'll let.
There's a chat box.
La 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 la.
Red lorry, yellow lorry.
So anyway, this I just got today, and it's the clown from the Tivoli in Copenhagen.
Very sweet.
So they have the same character, the Pierrot, since the around the mid 1800s. They I had never seen it, and there was it like a antique store with junk, a Chazarai store. That's it. I'm out of Hebrew and Yiddish. It's gone. I've done my.
I'm sure you have any Yiddish left. Do you schwitz when you get nervous? Do you quell at your grandchildren's accomplishments?
I quell.
When somebody annoys you, do you call them a schmuck?
I do. I have done that.
See?
Schmutz. I like a schmutz. I vary it. Schmutz putz. Utz.
Good.
Right,
Okay,
we're live.
Okay.
Mendrake,
Ready to go.
Loved Mendrake when I was a kid.
So hello everyone. Hello, welcome to Clown Power Live. We are a very diverse range of clowns chatting about clowning to one another. We are supported by a whole clowning community. And if you want to get involved, please do get in touch. And do spread the word in any way possible through fellow Clown Tribe members and supporters. Spread that word, folks. Our main contact for Clown Power is zoological.ie, zoological.ie, and you can see all the past recordings, and you can see today's recording on there. You can put in offers of help, any ideas that you may have, and support also with some hard cash. So yeah, we need more supporters, so your donations are very, very gratefully received. Okay, but today I'd like to start with a dedication. And I'm going to be reading out this dedication. So we remember today a member of our community who lost their father. This is Sue Brent, who flew with our Chaos and played in many other circuses. So Sue's been on Clown Power Live and maintains many links with the circus. After she stopped performing, she taught trapeze to primary school children in North London. And her father, Leslie Brent, died in January this year, aged 94. Leslie came to England alone in 1938, aged 13, and he was sent to England on the first of the Kindertransport to escape the oppression of Jewish people and heritage, which many others experienced in Germany. And later, as an immunologist, he was the co-discoverer of acquired immunological tolerance, which led the way to making transplants in humans possible. He was posthumously appointed MBE in 2020 for services to Holocaust education. At his funeral, Alexis, his close friend, said, Leslie was a cosmopolitan and saw injustice on all levels as a duty to be fought by enlightened citizens. And Leslie's biography, Sunday's Child, concludes, chaos rules the world. There are still hopeless wars being fought everywhere. Has the world really learned nothing from history? He asks and concludes, it makes me sad that our grandchildren are looking into such an uncertain future. We have failed them terribly. So this episode is dedicated to the memory of Leslie Brent.
Thank you.
And today we have Stav Maishar, who's talking to Ira Sedenstein. And Stav is a theatre maker, a multidisciplinary performer, academic researcher and educator, working across circus, theatre and contemporary performance. Hello, Stav.
Wow.
And Ira is a clown. He teaches, he writes, and he's worked in over like 140 live productions, including Cirque du Soleil's Corteo, Slava Polunin's Snow Show. He's created projects such as The Madness of King Lear and The Book of Clown with Slava. Welcome, Ira. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about what are you doing in the world to, I don't know, empower the power of clowning. Stav, would you like to kick off? How did you get into the world of performance?
I'm actually not a clown. I have clowns in my show. I have clowns as characters. I am not a clown. It's something that I tried exploring, but I found that when I try to be funny, I'm not. And when I don't try to, according to my husband, I am. So not a very good clown.
Well, you're an honest clown, so that's good. And that's, that's a beautiful place to start. And, also your humor, I think that the humor comes before being funny, if you know what I mean. So you're not lacking any humor.
Yeah, I definitely have humor. I'm just not very good at utilizing it on stage. I'm funny in real life. I again, at least my husband thinks so.
Can I just correct one thing that in my introduction, when you said, Maggie, that the Book of Clown with Slava, it doesn't have anything to do with Slava. So that's just something in the printing, I think. The Book of Clown was something I created with two actors who came to study with me a few years ago, Emily Burton from Los Angeles and Sang, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Sang Park, actually. It's his first name that I have more trouble with. Sang Hyun Park from South Korea. So the three of us created a show called The Book of Clown. Now, Stav, let's get back to you and stay with you.
Okay.
So can you just give us a little introduction to how you got where you are, which is Bristol, and how you started in performing arts, in theater and circus. Okay, that's
yeah. I'll give you the rundown. So I'm originally from Israel, born and raised, and I've been interested in performing ever since I can remember myself. My mother is a visual arts and performance arts critic, and growing up, a lot of the times when she went to see shows, I would be her plus one. And so I've absorbed theater and dance and concerts from a very, very young age. So I'm not really sure when I wanted to start performing, because it's something that's been in the back of my mind pretty much forever, thanks to my mom. And yeah, I started my professional career in Israel back when I was still in school. My first professional job was when I was 11 years old with the Israeli production of Oliver. Kept doing theater in Israel, moved to New York when I was 20, got my my education in musical theater. That's what my degree is in. Performed a little bit in musical theater. A lot of it, by the way, we were speaking a little bit of Yiddish earlier. A lot of my work in New York was with the Volksbühne, the National Yiddish Theater. And I started working on my own project about Jewish circus artists in Nazi Germany around 2013. And my move to Bristol was somewhat because I got tired of living in a country that doesn't have arts funding. I've been trying to make my show in New York for a few years and just, you know, applying for grants and applying for support, and there was barely anything to apply for. And even the things I applied for were all given out to big established organizations that have already proven if you give us money, it will be a wise investment, which is this very capitalistic American way of thinking about it. And I needed funding to make my work, and luckily I'm a European citizen. So I figured if I move to Bristol and if I split my time between New York and the UK, maybe more funding opportunities will be open to me. And sure enough, I moved to the UK, and less than a year later, I've already had, I think, 3 or 4 grants. I've had the money that I needed to make my show, which is really lovely. It's nice to be living in a country with arts funding. UK, don't cut arts funding, keep it going. It's good.
We're having a big battle about arts funding in so many ways right now in Australia. So we don't really know which way that's going to go, but it's not looking very good. But at the same time, sometimes necessity is the mother of invention, and hopefully things will be developed that may not have been developed with better support. But that's a very hopeful, naive attitude. I will maintain.
I think it's an interesting conversation to have, because I do know artists that look at arts funding as something that can make an artist become stale, because they already they have the funding, they rely on it, then supposedly they wouldn't be creating things that are as engaging. I understand that point of view. I politely disagree with it. I think if you're an artist worth your salt, then having funding is not what's going to make you become boring all of a sudden. It's going to give you the safety net that you actually need to be brave, to be courageous, to take risks. Because if you don't have funding and your income relies entirely on getting an audience, then you're going to try to make something that is attractive to the biggest common denominator possible, thus less daring, less groundbreaking, because you need more butts and seats. But if you have funding, then you know, okay, I've got that safety net, I can experiment now. That's been my point of view, at least. Arts funding gives me the confidence to be a bit more experimental, because while I'd love to get, you know, a full house, I know I'm not Cirque du Soleil. My appeal is very niche. It's okay.
Yeah, and I think that there's we see that here in Australia. We have a range of art support. There has been for decades. So it crosses the spectrum, but there's always discussions, particularly from those of us who are in the more fringe side, that there's too much support for the mainstream companies, which are more conservative. But they're also very often very good companies. So it's not about the quality necessarily, but it is what you're saying also. It's about the range of interest, not only from the artists, but also for our different audiences. And the experience of seeing an intimate show with 50 people in the audience who are of like minds, there's nothing that beats that. And then being in a large show with 2,000 people in the audience, and it's a big scale show and it's a big hurrah, there's nothing that beats that. It's apples and oranges. It's different things. And there's a whole range in between. So with yourself, now you have a theater background since you were 11. That was your first performance. Yeah. What did you play in Oliver, if you don't mind me asking?
Just an orphan. I was one of the orphans.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And please, sir, can I have some more?
That's right. Yeah, Bavakasha. You know, did you say that you also went on a tour? So it was a bus of kids, or
Yeah, Oliver, we started out performing in Tel Aviv, which is my hometown and basically the biggest art city in Israel. And then the following year, we took the show on tour in all of Israel, which was fun.
So do you think you played like 10 cities?
I don't remember anymore. We would, I'd get on the bus. I'd usually fall asleep. I'd wake up when we get there and then fall asleep after the show again. I don't remember. But yeah, we've traveled a lot around, and it was fun. It was a good little, first step into the world of performing and what touring is, which is a lot of sleeping in buses.
I think we're somewhere along the line, like right now, we're going to also talk about some Jewish themes. When I got interviewed a week ago, all of a sudden we were about to finish, Maggie, and somebody said, "Oh, but you haven't talked about Jewish clowns and stuff." Well, I had no intention to. I didn't know I was supposed to. And that just got thrown at me at the end. So today I figured I'd throw it to us, Stav, at the beginning. So I'm thinking, well, Oliver, what about Fagin? Because, to some people, Fagin is a Jewish character. He may or may not be, I don't know. But, you got to pick a pocket or two. Boy,
yeah, I mean, the trope of the old money-grubbing Jew is an old trope. We can see it in Shakespeare's Shylock. We can see it in Moliere's Laval. It's all over theater history. It's all over everything. I still remember when I travel, I do a lot of couch surfing, which is basically this website that connects people from all over the world who want to be hosted for free, just for the cultural exchange. And about, I think, 2 years ago, in summer 2 years ago, I was couch surfing in Lithuania, and I still remember I arrived at my host's house pretty late because of the flight, I think 2 or 3 in the morning, and he was kind enough to stay awake and let me in and show me the guest room, and he closes the door so I can go to sleep. This is 3 in the morning in Lithuania, and on the door on the inside is a poster of the Nazi propaganda movie The Eternal Jew, with this poster of a Shylockian Jew with a big nose and the payas and looking all sinister and whatnot. I had a hard time falling asleep that night. I did not feel safe in that house. But yeah, it's the trope exists. It is alive and it is well and it is kicking. And when I asked my host why does he have that poster, he said, "Oh, I thought the artwork was really well made."
That's great. And it is. It was very effective. I like to say that some of my best friends are anti-Semites. So I think that we're all prejudiced. We all have our weaknesses. And if he likes that artwork, say la vie. Obviously, you or I, or maybe even someone who's not Jewish for sure, would see that and find it very upsetting and very offensive, and it stirs something, doesn't it?
I can understand, as an artist, I can look at that poster and I can appreciate the proportions and the brush strokes. Like, I can look at it and go, okay, this is a really good work of illustration. And at the same time, I would never have that hanging because, if this is my guest room and occasionally I might get a Jewish person staying there, that person won't feel safe because you don't know why that poster is there. And I don't know. I tried to challenge him. I think it's still hanging there. I don't think I've changed his mind.
He could at least have a reverse one. So if somebody doesn't like that one, they could reverse it and have something else. Oh my Lord, that is funny. How old were you? I'm going to go back and forth to biographical stuff because I'm trying to figure this out myself. So how old were you when you went from Israel to England?
I went from Israel to New York when I was 20, and I lived there for 10 years, and I moved here to Bristol about 2 years ago.
And had you been in England before?
Yeah,
before you moved?
plenty of times. In fact, when I was growing up, I used to save my babysitter money so I can go to England. My first trip abroad alone when I was 17 years old was to London to see Matthew Bourne's ballet adaptation of Edward Scissorhands. That's what I saved money for. And I would travel to England to see musical theater. I fell in love with musical theater, and I couldn't fly all the way to New York from Israel, too far and too expensive. So I'd fly to London and see, you know, a musical every day on like a week's trip.
Yeah, I had several years where I would come to London specifically so I would teach workshops there, but I would teach the workshops so that I could see theater in London. And sometimes I would see 4 or 5 or even 6 shows in a week. You know, I'd see a matinee or 2 matinees and squeeze it in. And I really, and also, you know, again, going back to this range, I think in England, maybe more in London, but it extends through the UK, not just England, but the range of everything from big hoi polloi West End productions to the smallest, most intimate, you know, pub theaters upstairs in the pubs. And I've been in one that held about 25 people. And it's just, if you love theater, you know, it's hard to beat. And I imagine New York is similar.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate having lived in New York for 10 years. I really did get to experience, you know, anything from large Broadway show to a tiny like Brooklyn warehouse immersive show with 10 guests and anything and everything in between. And even now living in Bristol, you know, before the pandemic, I used to visit London for work once or twice a month. And the very last weekend I got to spend in London before all of this started, I saw Prince of Egypt on West End, huge Broadway musical. I saw another small like circus adaptation of the Persephone tale at the Vaults Festival, which is a tiny like warehousey grungy festival. And I saw a wonderful circus / spoken word show called the Mixed Race Tape at Jackson's Lane, which is an independent arts venue in North London that holds, I think, 100 or 150 people. So 3 shows of a very different nature with a very different kind of audience all on one weekend. I packed it in, and now I'm really glad I did, because who knows when I'll be able to see live arts again.
Yeah. And Bristol is a circus mecca. And do you feel like you practice enough, or?
No. 100% no. I have a love-hate relationship with training. I know that I need it, but I don't know, maybe my body isn't wired the right way. I don't get an endorphin rush when I work out like most people do. I don't enjoy working out as much as a circus artist should, which leads to not enough training, especially not now when there's no access to aerial equipment. But I bad stuff, bad.
Oh, no. But also, I had mentioned to you before we started that I read this interview from, it's called the Widow Stanton blog, and it was a fantastic interview with you. And one of the things in there, you explained that you're a multidisciplinary artist. So you were actually explaining, because you know, when we say somebody's a circus artist, that can actually mean 1,000 different things. If you say somebody's Jewish, that can mean 1,000 different things. I live in Australia. I'm an Australian citizen. I'm committed to being an Australian citizen, and being Australian can mean 1,000 different things. So as a circus artist, would you say you're more of a multidisciplinarian artist or a theater artist, or do you some weeks you say I'm circus and some weeks you say I'm puppeteer, and how do you?
I think it changes all the time. I think right now my immediate response to what do you do, I say I'm a performance maker. that feels as wide of an umbrella as can be. Because like you said, if you say you're a circus artist, that means a million things. If you say you're Jewish, that means a million things. Even saying I'm a theater actor, or, you know, there's a lot of different ways of approaching one's craft. I call myself a circus theater artist with like a little dash circus theater. I always feel like, you know, I have a bit of an imposter syndrome when it comes to my circus career, because I'm not as strong as a circus artist should be, because I don't have, you know, the right skills or the right tricks. So there is a bit of an imposter syndrome going on, but at the same time, I'm also like, that's okay. It's not the career that you set up to create for yourself anyway. You know, like, it was never my dream to be doing corporate gigs. It was never my dream to join a circus company and tour with it, making a show. I want to make my own shows, and I want to tell my own stories, and I use the tools that I have, and I think I use them well. So for the most part, imposter syndrome is held at bay for the most part.
And would you say that you love going to see circus?
Mm-hmm.
Or some circus? Or
absolutely. I love watching all kinds of circus, and I think, you know, I think I have a certain unique point of view, because on the one hand, the circus work that I create is contemporary. The circus training I've received is contemporary. I studied at Circus Warehouse in New York. I studied at Circa Media here in Bristol. It's a very contemporary approach to circus. But on the other hand, because my work deals with circus history, because I am an academic researcher and a circus historian, I also have a lot of respect and a deep understanding of quote unquote traditional circus. And so I love seeing contemporary, traditional, and everything on the spectrum in between. I love tented shows. I love shows in theater. I love a show that's a variety show with no plot in between. And I love a show that tells a story. They're all great. I have preferences, but I still enjoy seeing all the wide variety of work that circus artists are putting forth.
Yeah, that's great. I'm a very big fan of traditional circus, and I see a lot of contemporary circus as well, and I get really excited about, you know, if there's shows that I really like, or an artist within a show that I really like, or an act that I really like. It's like, really, it's all circus all over again. It's like the wow factor. But I have a high tolerance for kitsch. You know,
I don't.
It's not that I don't see it with, you know, critical eye, but I don't use that eye when I watch it. I use the other eye when I watch something that's really kitsch. And sometimes if I'm not critical of it, there will be something very magical that happens, even within a traditional and even within a kitsch performance. And sometimes they're so pure and even innocent, and it's very interesting. And then sometimes you see a contemporary show and you go, oh my God, they're just this fantastic artist and performer. So I think that the circus is it's so much variety of what we call circus, and there's room for all of us. You know, myself also, I'm much more theater than I am circus, but I had a few good circus skills. I was a good acrobat, pretty good. I was a pretty good juggler, you know, and I was good at slapstick and things like that. But I was always doing more theater. But I think the circus, it really, it's like you have this other thing called a home for outsiders and misfits, this petite mort, and you call it a home for outsiders and misfits. And the circus genuinely embraces that. And if there's one circus that you don't fit in, there's another circus that you do fit in. And
outsiders and misfits. I like that. Let's come back to that in a minute, folks. There's room for all of us, isn't there? In the circus. Isn't there just? So we're roughly at half time now, folks. So the community out there in here. Please, if you've got any questions, pop them in the Q&A box and we'll try our very best to get through them at some point during this session and cover them towards the end. And you're listening to Clown Power Live, when we're such a diverse range, as Iris just said, diverse range of clowns and circus performance, chatting about performance to one another. We're supporting a whole community, and if you want to get involved, please get in touch and spread the word. You spread the word, your friends spread the word. Let's build this community, folks. Clown Tribe members, circus members. Our main hub for Clown Power Live is zoological.ie, zoological.ie. You can check out previous chats and today's chat at some point if you want. So back now to Stav and Ira. If they switch their mute buttons off.
Now I think I'm good.
A clown moment when everybody's going. So,
oh, all right. So I did want to take a moment just to talk about my work. Am I unmuted? Can everybody hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. All right. Because we've been talking about my origins and how I got to study circus and perform and whatnot, but I really wanted to draw attention to where I am today because I worked hard to get here. So my current project, which I've been working on since 2013, so 7 years in the making, is a show called The Escape Act, a Holocaust memoir that's based on a true story of a Jewish circus acrobat who survived the Holocaust hiding in a German circus. The project started as just research for this show, but then as I got really nerdy and into these histories, it grew bigger and bigger. So the show still exists, and it tours in days when we're allowed to tour, but it also became a bigger research project. I have a lecture that I've been doing live in synagogues and Jewish museums and academic conferences, and now on Zoom, now that we're stuck at home. I have an exhibition that I tour with. I have workshops for youth. And right now I am taking advantage of this no performing, no touring time. And I'm finally putting together all this research that I've done into a book about the Lorsch family, one of Germany's most prominent Jewish circus families before and during Nazi regime. I'm fundraising for this book on Kickstarter. I just posted it in the chat. If anyone's interested in supporting a really interesting project on circus history and Jewish history, please consider pre-ordering a book. Or if you don't want a book but you still want to support the project, there's other little rewards on the Kickstarter too, including this cute little circus brooch that was designed especially for the project. There's all kinds of things that you can get and know that you are supporting an important research and preservation work into Jewish circus history. Yeah.
Yeah, and the book, is it called The Lorsch Family?
I haven't decided on a title yet. I think right now it's The Lorsch Family, The Rise and Fall of a Jewish Circus Dynasty, but it's subject to change. And I actually have here some of my small collection of Lorsch family postcards. In the turn of the century, it was very popular for circuses to have postcards for their audience members to send each other. So I've been collecting a few of these postcards because they're such a lovely.
And the central figure or person is Irene Danner, is that correct?
Yes. So this whole research started from one woman called Irene Danner, who was a descendant of the Lorsch family. Irene is the reason why I am where I am today. I chanced upon her story and the story of the Althoff circus that saved her and her family during the war. She basically fell in love with the Althoff Circus's clown, Peter Bento, and she and Peter persuaded the Althoffs to let her join, even though it was forbidden at the time to employ Jews. She joined the circus and performed there in front of everyone, including Nazi officers sometimes, performed under false identity. And later during the war, Peter and Irene persuaded the Althoffs to bring Irene's parents and sister to the circus, and thus all four of them survived.
Amazing. And did you actually get to meet her?
Unfortunately,
Is she alive?
she died in 2006, long before I knew about this. Pretty much everybody involved with this story passed away before I had the chance to start my research. The one exception, which was really an incredible experience. So Irene and her family, like I said, they were saved by the Althoff circus, but not just by the Althoffs themselves. Other circus artists also helped hide them, and particularly the Althoff circus's Moroccan Muslim acrobat called Mohammed Sahrawi. He was best friends with Irene and Peter, and he helped them hide whenever the Nazis would come to inspection. He would run and he would get them and put them in their little hiding place. And Mohammed is the only person who lived through those times that I got to meet. I traveled to Morocco 2 years ago to interview him. He was 94 years old at the time. And as far as I know, he is still alive. We spoke on the phone a few months ago in October. And yeah, he's still around as far as I know, and he is lovely and smart and full of fascinating circus stories that I've gathered meticulously.
There's a wonderful acrobat in Australia. He's probably an Australian citizen like myself, and he's from Morocco. His name is Mohammed, and he performs a lot with his daughters, and he's an absolutely amazing artist. So of course he was a tumbler like most of the Moroccans were, but he also works a fantastic clown act with a dog, and he works other acts as well. Works Risley and hand balancing act with one of his daughters. And so I asked him a week ago if he knew Mohammed Sahrawi,
which translates as of the Sahara Desert.
Okay, all right, close. And so he knows him, of course, but he hadn't seen him now for over 20 years. And he also said that that Mohammed had a school and studio in Tangier for many years. Of course, he's in his 90s now, so it's a different situation.
Yeah,
and,
well, Morocco has its own really rich and deep, fascinating history of circus, particularly, like you said, Moroccan acrobats. It's this. If I ever decide on going on another tangent of history, I'm sure that Moroccan circus history would be absolutely delightful to research.
Yes, and can I tell you another one? I don't know if you've come across this. It's a man I met recently, a few years ago. His name's Michel Rios, and he wrote an autobiography about a year ago, and it's called The Unlikely Life of an Acrobat. And in that, he was actually born in Germany. He's Jewish, and he tells the whole story in his book, but to make a long story short, his father had to go away for work or to survive or whatever, and kind of abandoned the family, really. And a Moroccan acrobat was near, and he and the mother fell in love, and the Moroccan acrobat helped the family to survive the last, it was probably around 44. So it's just after your cutoff date of 43, but he helped them to survive. And then they made their way to Paris in the late 40s. And I'm not sure if his name was Mohammed, but he also worked the two brothers very hard, because he knew as a Moroccan acrobat, you can survive as a kid, and the children can help to earn the money. So he made them very, very fine acrobats, and they did a Risley act, and they ended up being very, very successful. They were called the Rios brothers, I think. And they performed about 25 years or so in Las Vegas and in the Paris Lido, and I think maybe the Moulin Rouge and things like that. But in the beginning, they were performing on the streets of Paris as like little waifs, And so Michel tells this story in his book, The Unlikely Life of an Acrobat. So I don't know if you've come across that.
I have not, but I'll look it up because I'm always interested in other Jewish circus people. My academic research is about specifically Jewish circus artists in Germany during Nazi era, but my own personal research and my own personal history, let's put it, interests extend beyond that era. I have on my website, I have a blog where I interview Jewish circus artists still active today and occasionally publish biographies of Jewish circus artists who are no longer with us, both from Germany in the Nazi era, but far and beyond that. So yeah, I'll look up Michel Rios. It sounds like I have another person that I want to be researching.
Yeah. I'm happy to put you in direct contact with him, by the way.
Thank you.
All right, so we can do that. And the way I came to meet him was through his wife. His wife went to high school. She was in my same year as high school. She was a dancer, but I didn't know. And somebody else put me in touch with her. And then it turns out she's married to this man, Michel. Now, I was going to ask, there's a hidden world of Jewish people involved with the circus. And it's like, if somebody's ethnic, let's just say that when you try to fit in, you try to assimilate into another nation, and your family and your heritage is from a different nation, you often don't wear it on your sleeve. You often just say, I'm Australian, or I'm American, or I'm this, or I'm that. But you have to really dig, I think, to find the Jews, how many Jewish people are involved in the circus and even in clowning. Some of us, my name is a giveaway, of course, and also I'm fine with it. I'm Jewish and I'm Jewish, but also in the business sense, sometimes for an ethnic person, it's better off to not. Some people change their name or they play it down or whatever. But there's an interesting little connection that I was told once, that in the Soviet system, in Russia, we'll say, but it's the Soviet Union, that they had 100 circus buildings, at the peak, 100 circus buildings. They had 7,000, fully bona fide circus artists. But as I was told, the musical directors in the buildings were actually like the director. So when the new troupe would come in, or the new collection of artists would come in and play for the month or 2 months, the director, who was the musical director, right? Because they kept the tempo and they had to have everything measured. Well, most of those were Jewish.
I'm not surprised.
So this is something I've never seen written. It's just because I met one of them, and he explained this to me, and I was shocked because I had never heard that. So there's more, there's more, and I hope that if maybe even in this conversation, maybe people can reach out to you more with even more leads, I hope.
So a few points that this makes me want to touch on. First off, the thing about researching circus history, I think, is really interesting because as an academic field, circus is relatively new. And because of the nature of the beast, because of the nature of circus, a lot of research in this field cannot come from previous academic sources. It cannot necessarily come from books or from publications. A lot of us who research circus have to go in less traditional routes and look for oral histories and interview people and collect their stories and their memories. And of course, it then gets a bit complicated because in academia, you have to be, you have to check your sources and you have to make sure that everything you're writing is based on whatever you were able to find that's truthful. But of course, if it's not a publication, if it's not something that's been officially formally published, if it's oral history, then it's a bit trickier to rely on it. So, you know, on one hand, it's tricky to rely on the other hand, we have to rely on it because of the nature of circus and because of how young the circus research is. So it's great to hear that you're hearing all these stories. And yeah, I'm not surprised. Jewish people in performing arts has been around for forever and ever, since a time when it was one of the only jobs that Jewish people were allowed to do. For a long time, Jewish people were only allowed to do a certain type of jobs, and performing was one of them because it was considered lowly. So Jews were allowed to do that. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on, you were talking about how a lot of circus artists that are Jewish, like, you wouldn't know. A lot of it has to do, like you pointed out, with name changes, because of course in circus, you know, having a stage name that's catchy and flashy is desirable in marketing. So a lot of Jewish circus artists would change their name so that it's easier to pronounce or easier to market. But as far as my research extended, as far as I know, within the circuses themselves, people knew who was Jewish, and for the most part, like, nobody was bothered. Like you said, circus is a mix of ethnicities and religions and backgrounds and whatnot. So, you know, okay, this person's Jewish, this person's Muslim, this person's Japanese, this person's Moroccan. Like, it all just gets in the mixing pot and becomes, we're all circus, which isn't to say that circus doesn't have its share of racism and complex politics, but as far as I know, for the most part, Jewish artists weren't hiding their identities. It just wasn't something that they would flash about because it wasn't a selling point, I suppose.
Yeah.
Else? Oh, and the last point that I wanted to make, as I told you, I have a blog on my website where I interview contemporary circus artists, and one of the questions that I ask them is, where do they feel, if at all, that their circus identity and their Jewish identity overlap or intersect? And one of the most beautiful and interesting responses I've ever gotten from L.M. Feldman, who is a circus artist and a circus dramaturg, and a queer person. They were talking about how, for them, circus culture has always been about being the other, being the community on the margins, on the fringes of society. And it's the same for them when they think about their Jewish identity, because Jewish people have also always been the other in society, living on the margins. And so to them, the otherness in circus and the otherness in Judaism and their otherness in being a queer person, all of that kind of intermixes because they're all identities that are not mainstream identities. And I really love that angle of thinking of it, because it's true. As a person who is also a queer Jewish circus person, I feel that. I feel that my identities are all kind of, you know, not the mainstream identities, and this is where they meet, because they're all weird identities. They're all other.
Gefilte fish.
Gefilte fish. That's not very non-mainstream. A lot of people who are not Jewish love gefilte fish. I don't know why. It's awful.
But, you know, the gefilte fish is made from about 3 or so different fish. And that's why I was using that as a terrible metaphor, joke. But yeah, the other, and it's like owning the otherness, isn't it? It's that, yes, it's other, and yes, it's who I am.
Exactly.
You know, this is, and then when we use it in performing, this is what I'm giving you. You know, you celebrate it. It's a great thing.
And it goes back to what we talked about in the beginning about arts funding, because, you know, arts funding is really required in the places where you're making work that's not mainstream, in the areas where you're catering to minorities or to sort of niche interests, right? Because my work right now is about Jewish circus history. It's very specific. It might not be something that can fill a giant hall, but it's important, right? Because it sheds a light on a minority group. It sheds a light on history. There's, you know, it may not be a blockbuster, but it doesn't make it any less important or interesting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. I want to go back. I think it was on the Widow Stanton interview, and you explained something there about the Weimar, that before the not only the Holocaust, but before the Second World War, that the Weimar was vibrant, and it was there was gay, there was everything. Everybody could be free, and there was a celebration of that. And I was really touched by that, because we live in a very precarious time, and it's not just the last 2 weeks that are precarious. It's not just the last couple of months, and it's not even just the last couple of years that are precarious. We've been living in a growing precarious time internationally, especially I would say in the Western world, because I don't really know what's going on outside of that. We get so much in English about the Western world. And I wondered if you could say something about what the Weimar was like, the freedom that there was, and what the transition was. And is there anything that we can learn, you know, instead of falling down the chute again?
So help. I was gonna say, as a historian, you really get to notice sort of the repeating patterns in how events unfold, which is, you kind of end up feeling a little bit like Cassandra. Do you know the character of Cassandra from the Greek mythology? Her punishment was that she foretold the future. She had accurate prophecies, but nobody would ever believe her. So I sometimes feel a little bit like Cassandra, because I've seen history, I've studied history, and I can see history repeating itself, but no one would listen, and it's really frustrating. And yeah, when we think about, you know, Weimar Republic and how it preceded the Nazis' rise to power, it's really kind of, you know, it's comparing it to what is happening today is a bit upsetting, because, you know, before what's going on right now just started, I'm so glad it's starting, the Black Lives Matter protests, and it's good that it's happening, but, you know, we're at the brink of, some would say, World War III or a civil war, where we're at something is bubbling, when we're looking at what happened right before that. We've had really positive changes with LGBT positive legislation, and things have been, you know, basically history tells us that progression isn't linear. Just because things are getting better doesn't mean they're going to continue getting better. On the contrary, history tells us that right as things tend to get to a certain peak of human rights and civil rights and whatnot, something big happens, and a big bad event is coming up. That's sort of the progression of history, which is terrifying. And yeah.
I feel that for us, for our time, that one of the most sensitive things, or one of the most precarious things, is that within any cloistered group, that they're breaking apart. So on one hand, from the outside, it appears that this group or that group are actually, you know, ploying together to fight against some other group. But in fact, there's a self-destruction going on in so many communities, on so many levels. And that we've somehow lost the ability. I always say, it used to be when I was younger that you agreed to disagree. And also, I've been saying this lately, that for me, a friend was always the person that I was able to disagree with. So if I think about my really close friends that I know really well, and they know me, we actually know that there's areas that we disagree with. And we let those go, and we have other areas where we can talk about something sensitive, and you only go so far, because it's actually that you're going to clash, and you don't need to, and there's not going to be any benefit except that you're going to lose your friendship. So if I pulled all my friends together, they would hate each other. So with an individual, you find a way of peace and agreement. But I think in the small groups, in cloistered groups, there's also a lot of division. And this, I think, is a sign of our time. And this is where I think that we have to be more mindful, you know? Hello, excuse me, sunshine. What the heck was that?
That was my husband helping me charge my computer that's about to die.
Too much information.
Oh, that was beautiful. Thank you, Javi. I was gonna say, I think we all could use friends that we disagree with, because if we all lived in an eternal echo chamber, how boring would that be? I don't want that kind of friendships around me. I love a discourse. I love a debate. I always welcome people with different opinions. But I think I have reached a conclusion that, again, people may not agree with me, but this is my conclusion. There are topics we can disagree on, and then there are certain topics that are where I draw the red line. Yeah. So, for example, when we talk about human rights, right? When we talk about Black Lives Matter or equality for people of all genders and sexual orientations, that to me is not up for debate. If you don't think that a Black person deserves the same safety and the same, treatment from police as a white person, that's not up for debate. That's that's where I draw the line. We can debate about what foods we love. We can debate big important things too. But there are certain topics where you may have an opinion that's different than mine. I just don't think it's valid.
Great. Yeah. Absolutely, Stav. Absolutely. We're coming up to our last 5 minutes, folks. I'll be winding down. Please, if put any questions you have. We do have one question. I'll come back in a minute. Thank you, Sue Broadway. This is Clown Power Live. If you want to get involved, please get in touch. Check out the website, zoological.ie, zoological.ie. Donate cash, ideas, help, support. We've all got already got quite a cohort, but we need more of people supporting. So questions. Oh, I wanted to say, Stav, give yourself a little mention again for your research project funding. I take it might be on your website, so you might want to kind of mention that again.
Sorry. If anyone wants to donate to the Kickstarter or just learn more about my work and my project, the website is www.theescapeactshow.com, and you can find everything there.
Thank you, Stav. We've got a question here from Sue. Circus as an expression of non-mainstream. How is the aspiration to be more mainstream, academic, populist, and the aspiration to express the non-mainstream reconcilable? Who wants to take that one? Stav, Ira, both want to have a bash?
Yeah, both have a bash. You go, Stav.
I think we all understand that we exist in a world with certain limitations. So, for example, when we talk about arts funding, we know that you cannot ask for funding without showing that it has a sort of benefit, right? If you're given money, you should show it goes to a good purpose. And to show that it goes for a good purpose, you need research, you need academia, you need surveys, you need somebody to look at what's been done and gather it and collect it and make logic of it. So it's a good thing that there is circus academia now. It's a good thing that there's circus research going on, because we are no longer having conversations that are just based on our personal experience. We can actually refer to data. We can refer to research going, oh, circus has been proven to help with motor skills. Circus has been proven to, like, there is a benefit in having that research happen, because it helps us get attention and funding and be seen as a valid art form, I think.
Yeah. I think that a lot of times I would go to the theater and I would sit up in the back row, because I might look at the show and I might not like it, or I might really like it, but I used to like to take in how the audience was reacting. So I was studying, not just to improve my own skill as a director and performer, but also to understand what goes on, what does an audience respond to, and what do they appreciate, and what do they love. And I think that in the circus, I don't have any problem going to see Cirque du Soleil and loving the show, even if there's things I may not like. And it's the same with any contemporary, other smaller contemporary show, or even with the, as I mentioned earlier, a traditional show. I'm a good punter. I'm a good audience. When I go away, I can think about it. I can discuss it. But you know, Sue asked this question. Of course, as I mentioned before, I saw her in Circus Oz, in the original Circus Oz 1980 in Holland. And they were really radical and they were really popular. And they were really doing something. And they were also a magnificent clown troupe with really high skills. So Circus Oz in its early incarnation was really something special. It really was. And then it evolved. A lot of the originals, one by one, left. And then the Whiz Kids came in from the Fruit Flies, which was a great boost. And then some of those people went off and they were even more radical artistically than the original Circus Oz. You know, so the original Circus Oz that was left was conservative to the next generation coming in. So I think that there's a way of mixing those two ends of the conservative circus and the radical circus, but they don't always meet. And but I think that we also have to support as colleagues. You know, if you want to do something that I don't want to do, you should do it, and I should be supportive of that. And I don't have to like it. I have to like you. I have to support you. You know, and I think that there's a breaking point in us as artists where we think we're supposed to like the show. And I go, no, I don't agree with that at all. You know, we can discuss it. And you can always, after you see a show, even if you didn't like it, you can always say thank you to the artist, because the artist just gave everything they've got. And so I think that we as artists also have a learning curve that's never going to end. That learning curve is going to go on to eternity. But I think there are ways to blend the radical, and it's not extreme radical, but radical with the conservative.
I want to add to what you're saying. One of the things that make me really sad in circus discourse or circus culture is to see the rift between traditional circus artists and contemporary circus artists. I have conversations with contemporary artists, mostly I'd say younger than me, so 20s, and there's this sort of looking down at traditional circus, saying, oh, it's entertainment, it's not art, and it's not interesting to me. And then on the other hand, I'll be talking to traditional circus artists, and they're looking down at contemporary circus, saying, oh, they don't know what it's like to travel with a circus, to pitch a tent, to sleep in a caravan. You know, they don't know the real circus life. And I'm just looking at both ends going, can we stop this? Can we just recognize that it's okay to prefer one circus to another and still have respect for the work and the artistry that it takes to make circus work of all kinds? Can we just recognize that?
Mm-hmm. And I think also, you know, we have to practice tolerance. Every person on all aspects of our lives, and especially for us as artists, we have to practice tolerance. Yep. And that means also for our fellow artists. Connected with that, I would say, you say tomato and I say tomato. And that old kitsch song actually had a bit of wisdom in it. And then they say, oh, let's call the whole thing off. And I think that we can endlessly argue, not you and I, but people can endlessly argue about whether it's tomato or tomato. Well, it's both. It's both. Let's call the whole thing off.
Absolutely.
And so say all of us.
And so say all of us.
And so say all of us. Well, how are we going? Are there any more questions?
No, not at the moment. We have listeners, but no more questions.
I'm sure there's questions, and you know, they should also feel free to ask Stav or myself if there's something that you don't feel like asking, right to us. You know, because you know, some of the things that we're touching on, I think they apply to all misfits, all outsiders, all marginalized groups, all ethnicities as well, all people of difference. And I think that Stav and I, this is the first chance to meet each other, but I feel that there's a commonality in let's say philosophically in that respect, that you know, there's a lot of area for us to practice accepting people who we marginalize in our own mind. We have to find ways within ourselves to adapt that.
Absolutely. I agree with you that, you know, tolerance is something you need to practice. Compassion is something you need to practice. It's kind of like muscles that if you don't train them, they become stale and are no longer useful to you, right? Like this is also part of the conversation that's going on right now about, you know, people need to educate themselves because it's not the responsibility of a marginalized person to hand you education on a plate. Yeah. It is your job as the person benefiting from systems of oppression to go and educate yourself on them.
That's great, Stav. I like that, education.
Absolutely.
There's going to be our next session on Clown Power Live is on next Sunday, 12 noon. So a little bit of a break. Have you got any more questions between you, Ira, and Stav that we've not covered that you might like to? I meant to say this.
No, I think